In 1961, psychologist Stanley Milgram ran an experiment that still unsettles people today. Ordinary participants were told to administer what they believed were increasingly severe electric shocks to another person, simply because a man in a lab coat calmly told them to continue. 65% went all the way to the maximum voltage, not because they were cruel, because authority, structure, and gradual escalation are powerful enough to override personal conscience in most ordinary people. This is the real foundation of invisible influence, and today I'm breaking down exactly how social control actually works, using real documented psychology, so you can recognize it the moment it's used on you, and understand precisely why it works. The first mechanism is authority signaling, and Milgram's experiment is the clearest proof of it that exists. Humans are wired to defer to perceived authority, often bypassing their own judgment entirely once a credible authority figure takes responsibility for the outcome. This is why uniforms, titles, and confident, calm delivery carry influence completely independent of actual expertise. The brain responds to the signal of authority, not necessarily the substance behind it. Recognizing this means asking, every time you feel yourself deferring quickly, am I agreeing because this person has actually demonstrated competence or because they're simply performing the posture of authority convincingly? The second mechanism is the foot-in-the-door technique, documented by psychologists Jonathan Freedman and Scott Fraser in a 1966 study. They found that people who agreed to a small, easy request were dramatically more likely to later agree to a much larger request from the same source. In their original study, homeowners who'd agreed to display a small sign were far more likely to later agree to a large, intrusive sign on their lawn, compared to homeowners approached with the large request cold. This is precisely how cults, high-pressure sales environments, and manipulative relationships escalate control. Never with one big ask, but through a sequence of small, reasonable-seeming commitments that build on each other until the final ask doesn't feel like the leap it actually is. Ayanokoji operates on the exact inverse of this principle when he reads other people. He never makes his real ask directly either. He tests with small, low-stakes probes first, watching how someone responds to something minor before he ever reveals what he actually wants, which means by the time his real objective is visible, the other person has usually already committed to a version of the interaction he quietly designed several steps earlier. The defense is simple but requires discipline. Evaluate every new request on its own merits, not on the basis of what you already agreed to previously. The third mechanism is what cult researcher Hassan calls the BITE model, control of behavior, information, thought, and emotion, developed from his own first-hand experience inside a high-control group before he became a licensed counselor, studying coercive influence professionally. The information component is often the most invisible. Controlling what someone reads, hears, or is exposed to gradually narrows their frame of reference until the group's version of reality becomes the only version available. This isn't unique to cults. It shows up in toxic workplaces, controlling relationships, and closed online communities that discourage outside sources. The real defense against this specific mechanism is deliberately maintaining outside relationships and outside information sources, because isolation is almost always a prerequisite for control, not a side effect of it. The fourth mechanism, and one of the most well-documented, is Robert Cialdini's principle of social proof. Real behavioral research consistently shows people look to the behavior of others to determine correct action, especially under uncertainty. Cialdini's own research included studying real high-pressure sales and compliance environments from the inside, and he found that manufactured social proof, fake crowds, fabricated scarcity, staged consensus, reliably overrides individual skepticism, because the brain treats everyone else as doing this as a strong, fast signal that doesn't require independent verification. This is why manipulative environments so often manufacture the appearance of consensus before ever making the actual ask. Ayanokoji exploits the inverse of this constantly in social settings. He deliberately positions himself as unremarkable within the group's existing consensus about who matters, because being read as part of the unremarkable majority means nobody bothers directing social proof pressure at him in the first place. He's not resisting the mechanism, he simply made himself invisible to it. The defense is recognizing that popularity and correctness are two entirely separate facts that manipulation deliberately blurs together. The fifth mechanism is intermittent reinforcement. The same psychological principle B.F. Skinner documented decades ago in his research on reward schedules. Unpredictable reward, sometimes warmth, sometimes coldness, sometimes praise, sometimes punishment, with no reliable pattern, creates a stronger behavioral hook than consistent treatment of either kind. This is the real mechanism behind why people stay attached to manipulative relationships and controlling environments far longer than logic would predict. The brain becomes fixated on chasing the unpredictable reward, not repelled by the inconsistency. Recognizing this pattern in your own relationships, where affection and withdrawal never follow any predictable logic, is one of the single most protective pieces of psychological literacy you can have. It's worth noting this is also the one mechanism Ayanokoji himself almost never uses on people he actually respects, and the story treats that as meaningful. The version of him that manipulates through unpredictable reward is written as his most damaged mode, not his most impressive one, which lines up with the real psychology. Intermittent reinforcement produces attachment, not respect, and the two get confused constantly in both fiction and real life. Here's the extremely important line I need to draw clearly before going further. Everything described so far is documented, studied, real psychology, and every single mechanism exists on a spectrum from ordinary social influence, which is a normal and unavoidable part of human life, to coercive control, which causes genuine harm. Persuasion becomes manipulation specifically at the point where transparency disappears, where someone is deliberately concealing their actual intent, exploiting a vulnerability rather than making an honest case, or removing your ability to say no without cost. This isn't a technical distinction, it's the entire ethical line. And the purpose of this video is recognition and defense, not deployment against people who trust you. So here's how you actually build resistance to all 5 mechanisms. When you notice yourself deferring instantly to someone's tone or title, pause and separate their confidence from their actual evidence. Before agreeing to any escalating request, evaluate it independently rather than in reference to what you already agreed to. Deliberately maintain relationships and information sources outside any single group or person who might benefit from your isolation. When you feel social pressure building around a decision, ask whether you'd still choose it if you were the only person in the room. And pay close attention to inconsistency in how someone treats you. Unpredictable warmth and coldness is a pattern worth naming, not a mystery worth chasing. I'll close with this. Real social awareness, the kind that actually protects you, isn't cynicism toward everyone you meet, and it isn't turning these same tools around to control the people in your own life. It's the ability to notice exactly when normal human influence crosses into deliberate exploitation, name it clearly, and remove your consent the moment it does. That single skill, built on real research instead of vague suspicion, is worth more than any manipulation tactic you could ever learn to use on someone else.